welcome to the Car Sim and Race Driver Show, presented by Hugh Hattrick. Here at Bathurst in the Forest, my very special guest, basically Rascal Rabbit, Josh Martin. It's great to have you back on the show. Drive fast and try not to crash. Hello and welcome to the Car Sim and Race Driver Show. And tonight we have a fantastic special guest. And I know I say this about every guest that we have on the show, but this is truly outstanding. We have Chaz Draycott. Welcome to the show, Chaz.
Thank you very much, Hugh. It's a pleasure to be here, mate. Pleasure.
Now, in the pre-show build-up, that's not available to the public, and it's all private for that one, you've been telling me about the kind of people you've been working with, and I have to say it's an incredible lineup, so we'll definitely come to that a little bit later on in the show. But Chaz, you are a legendary commentator, and you've been doing lots of sim racing, but tell us, how did it all start? And was it driven by a love of motorsport, or how did you get involved in commentating on sim racing and, of course, the real racing championships that you do?
It's a bit of a complicated one, really, with how it all started. But I started watching Formula One when I was very, very young. My dad started getting involved in, well, not getting involved in it, but started watching it, and was a real big fan. And then I sort of started sitting down watching the races with him. And I used to be really into drawing when I was a kid. So I'd always see the cars on TV and I'd start drawing them. And I saw loads of, he had these like spotter's guides almost. You could get a book years and years ago, like the F1 yearbook each year. And they had like these side profiles of the cars on them. And I got really intrigued as to how it was all laid out and formatted. And I started drawing these cars side on as a kid. And there was one defining moment that my dad always reminds me of. And he always says that it's how cocky I've always been, where I was sat on the floor drawing a picture of Spa-Francorchamps, and I turned around to him and said, "Dad, how do you spell Francorchamps?" And he said, "Why do you want to know that?" And I said, "Well, they're racing at Spa-Francorchamps." And he said, "It's just called Spa." And right on cue, Murray Walker comes on TV. "Hello, we're at Spa-Francorchamps for the 1999 Belgian Grand Prix." So he always reminds me of that. And then after that, the love of it grew. And then through the whole drawing aspect of it, I started drawing little race cars from like an aerial point of view. And I used to then go to the extent of drawing racetracks with a marker pen on the back of rolls of wallpaper. And then I'd race these little drawn cars around them. I'd draw the paddocks and everything. It was so nerdy. It was unbelievable. But from there, I developed the idea that I don't want to be the one to decide who wins this race. So then it went into developing like a roll. You roll a dice, and depending on where you get on the dice happens on each lap to each car, and loads of stupid stuff. It then went into Excel spreadsheets and everything. It got a little bit out of hand, you could say. But while doing this, in my head, or sometimes out loud, I was commentating on what was going on, adding a bit of drama to it and following it up. And then nothing really came of it. I was always a motorsport fan since then. Obviously grew up a bit, grew out of doing that and playing with toy cars and so on. I say that though, and I've got a load of model cars up there. And then in 2014, my friend gave me a gaming PC, and I'd wanted to get into iRacing for ages. I'd seen that it was a thing, and I saw broadcasts of it, and I was always looking for something else to watch. And because of how esports never sleeps, it's not got an off season. That's the beauty of it. I always had something to watch, and there was always something going on. I was watching Apex Racing TV for a good 3 years before I even got my gaming PC. And eventually I got into iRacing, didn't really communicate with anybody very much, and then suddenly got into BSR, which is British Sim Racers, and got involved in their community. And a guy that everybody knows and loves, Ellis Stevens, known lovingly as Kip in the community, got me to run a league called the BSR Kia Club Series. And from there, people started to know my name a little bit just from doing that. And then it sort of went stale after a while. There was a few things went on, and unfortunately the series ended. But then I sort of stayed in the community a bit. And then eventually, Apex Racing TV, I'd obviously heard them for years. Alex Simpson and Andrew Woodhouse with Adam Bath. They were the three that I'd always listened to. And eventually I was commentating with two of them as just a trial. That was I think it was April or early May 2018 that I first made my debut doing that on the BSR MX5 series. It went down pretty well, I could say, and then since then it's just taken off a bit. I worked for Apex for a long time, and then I got picked up by Ian Roots, who I must give a thank you to at Sim Racers World TV. And since then, I mean, last sort of 18 months has just been bonkers, really bonkers.
That's brilliant. So when you were kind of growing up watching Formula One, what were your kind of favorite kind of races? Do you have any kind of really memorable moments that have stuck with you?
I mean, we all say the 1998 Belgian Grand Prix, but because I was little, I was like, oh yeah, a crash. You know, I was excited in that. Obviously now I see it and go, oh God, I hope they're all right. But that race in its own, just because of how much went on, Schumacher hitting Coulthard, Hill winning the race, that was one of the real highlights for me. And the 1996, I think it was, 96 Australian Grand Prix, where Villeneuve and Hill had that almighty battle to the end. And you had, I even went, this is again another point of me being too excited with marker pens. I actually used to have two little toy Formula One cars that my dad painted as the Rothmans Williams, because I was obsessed with that Williams. And because I wanted to reenact that battle, I actually coloured in with brown marker pen one of them because of the oil spatters that went all over one of the cars. It was Hill's car, wasn't it, that got spattered?
Yeah, and eventually, because that's right, because Villeneuve eventually went out, didn't they? It had with an oil pressure leak or something or whatever it was. That I know that was a cracker of a race. So have you been to some Grand Prix as well live to see them over the years?
Only two, actually. Both of them the British Grand Prix. I went in 2006 and I didn't particularly enjoy it because during qualifying I broke my wrist.
Oh goodness.
Yeah, how? I actually got to sit on the very bed that they sat Michael Schumacher on, though, when he broke his leg in '99, which was a nice little stat. And then the 2019 British Grand Prix. It was not last year, the year before now.
That was a very exciting race, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was when
Vettel did Vettel win in 2019?
No, Hamilton won it. It was Hamilton and Bottas had their little scrappy do near the beginning.
Oh yes, yeah.
But, I was the MC for the F1 esports stage all weekend, so I was there from the Thursday with the events house, and I was there from Thursday I did 4 nearly 10-hour days on my feet commentating on just public races, and it was fantastic. You know, they had a massive stage with 8 simulators each side, all 9. They had one on the end, which was the DHL fastest lap sim, and they'd just get 16 people at a time to come up. They had an empty space in the middle for me to wander around and offend people on, and a big screen, and gave me a PlayStation controller and said, "Yeah, I'll commentate this," and it was brilliant. One of the best weekends I've ever had. It was awesome.
That does sound like. Hopefully there'll be more of that to come as well as COVID kind of eases and we can get back to doing more events again. Then I think that's where it's going, isn't it? That's the thing. It's funny though, because you do remember your Grand Prix that you go to. The only one I've ever been to was in 1993 at Donington. I was 18.
Oh yeah!
And for a birthday present, I got a ticket with my friend and his father, and we went down to watch them. We saw Ayrton Senna win at Donington, and it was just the most remarkable day. And the atmosphere was electric, you know, and it was windy, it was wet, and then it was just overcast, and there was no sunshine at all the whole time. And then after the Grand Prix, there was an amazing touring car race where the heavens opened and the water came down, and it was incredible to watch all of that. But also just to see the overtakes, and we were at the back, was it the Donington Loop? At the back of the circuit,
the GP
and at the chicane at GP Loop, and we saw Schumacher go off into the gravel just in front of us, and all of that, you know. So it was amazing, an incredible day. And then before it starts, the helicopters go past, and you get all the atmosphere. It kind of puts your hairs on the back of your back up. You know, it's really kind of quite emotional. And then, of course, the warm-up lap, because in those days the noise was unbelievable from these V12s and everything else. And I remember putting our hands to your ears as the cars went past just on the warm-up lap. And then when they finally came up, you knew that the lights had gone to green, because all you heard was the revs going right up, and it just dropped them and boom, and then off they went. And it was the most incredible thing. But I suppose as a commentator, you must get that. What's the most exciting race you've ever kind of commentated on that's given you that incredible experience?
Oh God, that's probably the hardest question you could have asked me. I honestly, I don't know.
Or what has there been a race that's really stood out that has really got you going?
There's one that was very interesting quite recently, and there's a series I'm going to be racing in this year called the Sunday Drivers MX5 series, and it's on iRacing, and a lot of the guys, they're either inexperienced or they're not the quickest of guys, and myself included. And
That sounds like the kind of thing I would do then.
but I commentated with my friend Jack Werrell, Mark Werrell, fellow commentator, his son, and they were at Lime Rock Park, and it was just the most bonkers. Like, even though there were incidents aplenty, but there was an amazing battle of 5 cars at the front, and they were covered by about a second, I think, at the line. It was just incredible stuff, absolutely incredible. And that one just always sticks in my head a little bit. I had a lot of fun recently with a series that I run, the British Boring Car Championship. We had our Christmas party where we ran the Volkswagen Jetta TDI on iRacing round Daytona Oval. Flat out 130 mile an hour diesel everywhere. It was brilliant. But we had the big one at Daytona on the back straight. There was a massive accident, and it was the funniest thing I've seen in ages. Race-wise, I'm trying to think, though, if there's another one, but honestly, there's so many. I think in the last 2 years, I think I must have done at least 200 broadcasts. I'm struggling to remember one that stands out that much. So if anybody's watching that was involved in one, I'm sorry.
No, I mean, how do you think? Obviously, you go to all the main circuits like Brands Hatch and Silverstone, Donington, different places. Do you find that certain tracks are just maybe a little bit more exciting than others? You always see quite a lot of action at Brands Hatch and places like that. Do you find it's just a good circuit for overtaking or for lots of kind of crazy maneuvers and things like that?
I love Brands. Brands is incredible. I was fortunate enough to commentate there on my birthday this year for the Creative Funding Solutions Sports 2000 Championships, and they had 2 meetings towards the end of the year. In September, they were there for the race on the Indy circuit as part of the Ford Power Live event, and then they rounded out their season on the GP circuit. And even though you can't see the back end of the circuit from the commentary box, it's probably the nicest commentary box in the country. It's just while they're on the Indy section, and you get to see them going up towards Druids, and then they disappear behind the trees, and then one of them comes back down, and then one of the other ones doesn't. You get those moments. It's just brilliant. It really is. And I think that I'd like to say Alton Park is great, but I've only commentated there once. It was actually my first ever real commentary I did in late 2018 as a bit of a one-off shadowing Clive Woodward. But the thing with Alton is where the commentary box is, if you look to your right down towards Old Hall Corner at turn 1, they've got a massive hospitality building right in your eyesight. You can't see turn 1. So you can only see them going into turn 1, hitting the brakes, and then see the exit. And it's I don't know why they did that, but that's for them to explain, not me.
If you can't see what's going on, then what do you do? Do you just have to try and kind of think of what you can say for a few seconds before they come into view again?
Yeah, I think that's one of the main bits of the job that you need to sort of get down, really. You need to be able to... I had a lot of this at the Nürburgring as well, where you can't always see the battle that's going on. Even if you've got a live feed, it's not always showing what's going on. You have to be able to look at the timing screen and make a story out of it. You have to pick up on someone that's set a purple sector, or just look down it and figure out who's close together, or who's, if you've remembered something in your head that, this guy was 10 seconds ahead of this guy, and suddenly it's 5 seconds, you're thinking that gap's come down. You could see a battle coming up there, just even if you're just saying, so-and-so's in the lead now by this amount, you've just got to at least, you've just got to roll the facts out. And as I said before, when we were just talking before we started, you've got to dress it up a little bit. You've got to expand the vocabulary on it. Don't just say, this guy's in the lead now. I've heard people, David Addison uses a phrase that I really enjoy, where he says it's something like, Tom Ingram's in the lead by, he's 1.2 seconds into the good. I can't remember quite how he works it in, but he says to the good. And that is one of my all-time favorite phrases, because it just works. But it's one of them phrases that if you use it too much, I think you'll pick up on it a bit, that you're repeating yourself. But like I say, it's just, you need to work in something else that's happening. If you can't see it, you need to make something to talk about, like talk about the conditions. the times, how long's left in the race,
Yeah.
what you think could happen, just anything. And
anything to fill in that gap, isn't it? Yeah, to make
yeah,
it,
that's the hard bit of the job,
yeah.
I think.
Yeah, I always remember Murray Walker. I was watching the 1992 French Grand Prix, and it was again a wet race, and I think there was a crash, and so they red flagged the race. And Senna, and it was one where Senna and Schumacher went off.
Yeah.
Schumacher overtook him, and they crashed coming into one of the hairpins. So there was a bit of a kerfuffle with that and so on. But they all had to go back, and eventually they restarted the race. And when they got it going again, they lost pictures on BBC at the time.
Right.
And so Murray Walker said, I believe you've lost pictures over there in the UK, so I'll try and keep you up to date with everything that's going on, with what I can see. And he went on to give this incredible battle between Alesi and I think it was Mansell, and I'm trying to remember who was Mansell's teammate, or was it Patrese? Patrese that year, wasn't it? And there was as if this most incredible battle between Alesi, Patrese, and Mansell, I think it was at that time. And then when the pictures finally came back, we realised there was about a 10-second gap between Alesi and Patrese, or whoever he was battling, and nothing had changed in the last wee while. But James Hunt just allowed Murray to kind of say what he wanted to say to keep it going, So it was a great way that Murray could get away with all of that. I think to keep people on board. But so how do you find, obviously, because the difference between commentating at a real event and also a sim event, is there what kind of differences can people kind of see when you're commentating on the two?
I'd say, from my perspective, doing the real world stuff's easier. And I've said that to a few people, and they've said, like, what? Are you sure? But the thing is with sim racing is you can always follow the action. In sim racing, whether it's iRacing, Assetto Corsa, R-Factor, you always have the ability to always be on top of the action. You can still have your timing screens. The broadcast will always be there. There will be cameras at every single place. You don't have to rely on a different person to be out at each post manning cameras. Even if you do have a feed, sometimes you might not in real world stuff. But in real world stuff, you're only expected to call what you can see. In sim racing, the cameras are always there. They're always on it. And I think you have to constantly reel it off bit by bit. The main difference, I would say, is that another thing that I always pick up on is sim racing, you don't get like random engine failures or suspension failures, things like that. Because I like to think that the sim racing world relies on that sort of stuff to be hardware failures. Someone's wheel turns off, their monitor goes off, the PC crashes, things like that. I like to think that we attribute that to what would be an engine failure or a puncture or something like that. But making an excuse for what's going on screen if it doesn't look natural is probably the hardest bit of sim racing commentary, because if you've got a car that just disappears or glitches out, goes straight into a wall, you have to instantly think of what could have caused that. So when you see someone go off, like when I've been broadcasting before, someone will go straight off at a corner and hit the wall, and the car won't do anything. It won't hit the brakes, won't slow down, won't sort of counter steer. And you'll go back to a replay, go straight on board and say, watch the wheel. Does it move? And then if he's going around a corner and then suddenly, bang, goes straight, you're like, right, well, his wheels failed. There you go. We know what it is now. Move on.
Yeah.
But sometimes other things happen. You'd like, what? Like, why has that happened? But in your head, you say that. You go in, that doesn't look right. But when it comes out of your mouth, you say, oh, he's just having a technical problem there. Or you sort of excuse it. You make up a reason for it happening.
Yeah.
That's probably the main.
Yeah, because you don't want to put people off, I suppose, or give your own view on a particular thing when maybe that might kind of put in a different slate on the actual race, I suppose, isn't it? But no, it's good that you get to find out through experience as to why those things go wrong. But now we've got some good comments, so plenty of people watching.
I've got open on here.
Oh yeah, we had some really good ones. Now I'll go right back up to the top because here we are. Now it's going back to the very start when you were talking about how you'd made your own track and you would roll the dice and that. Andrew Mara said it sounds like environmentally friendly scalextrics as you were kind of moving it, going through racing the two.
Yeah.
Say, and he also says, got to wonder if people accidentally drive to Leamington Spa to watch the race at Spa.
Well, yeah, there's always the meme that comes up on Facebook for me where it says like her version of Spa, and it's like a spa day, and it's like, oh, the lads version of Spa. It's just no rouge. But he mentions environmentally friendly scale extract. Actually, I want to sort of do a bit of a plug here, but it's not for anything that I've ever done. There's a board game called Formula D. It used to be called Formula Day, and it's annoying me that it's called Formula D because obviously that's the name of the World Drifting Championships effectively. Right. And it's the most to try and explain this board game is the most complicated thing in the world. But you've got a massive game board, tiny little cars that are about this big, and you've got obviously squares on the track. But they've made it interesting in the way that it's not just, oh, I've rolled 6 and you've rolled 4, I've gone faster than you. It's not always roll as high as you can because the corners are marked out and you've got to stop in a designated area a certain amount of times. So some corners are slower, you have to stop in a red area twice, fast corners just once. And you get little gearboxes and there's 6 dice, one for each gear. You have to properly plan out when you're going to slow down, change down a gear and stuff like that. Honestly, go and Google it, everyone. It's very difficult to get hold of a copy, but it is fantastic. Best board game I've ever got. I've got 2 copies myself just because I wanted more cars. And honestly, like that is pretty much what I was trying to achieve when I was younger, is what this game has done. So when I found it, it blew my head. I mean, Andrew Mars put a thing in the chat with the little exploding brain emoji. That's how I feel about it. It's amazing. Formula D, it is. It's amazing. It really is.
That's fantastic. No, we'll definitely look out for that. That would be a good board game to get for the family and see how they can make that all work. Now we've got a few some other great comments by Nielinsky. Tom Brooks or Jimmy Broadbent? Who do you prefer?
I'm friends with both of them. Well, Jimmy suggested me to Gran Turismo to partner Tom Brooks when he couldn't do some of the FIA certified Gran Turismo World Championship stuff. Tom has also helped me out with a lot of stuff as well, and he also bought me a Domino's once. So I'm gonna have to say Tom. I'm sorry, Jimmy. Jimmy's got enough fans and lovers as it is.
Well, if he watches the show, you might get a message from him later.
Yeah, I've never recommended you again.
I don't think he watches the show as yet, so don't worry. That'll be fine. Now we've also got. We'll go down the comments and here we are. It says Andrew Marr says, "Ask Chaz what is his best phrase for a crash." Because he wants to start using it for my gaming live streams for when I crash quite often.
I like to say someone's binned it, but that's a bit of a common one. A commentator at Alton Park, I'm not quite sure it used to be, but it was about 10 years ago now when I heard it. He used to say that was a bit of a self-crash, which was quite a good one because he always used to say people had gone self-crashing and grass tracking. What else was it now? There was another one he used recently. I can't remember what it was now. Thrown it at the scenery is one that I quite like. He's thrown it at the scenery. I don't really have any other original ones, to be fair. Oh, that's the thing. A lot of the time with commentary phrases, you often find that you say something and you think, I've either heard that before or I've just come up with that, and the likelihood is you've heard it before somewhere and someone else has said it. But we don't copyright these things.
Exactly. No, that's the thing. Was it Martin Brundle who came up with that one? He's driving straight to the scene of the accident. Isn't it?
That one. Yeah,
it was like and spinning off in sympathy. And I always remember it was at James Hunt. A fantastic one on Philip Alliot when he nearly took Nigel Mansell off in Portugal a number of years, was it 86 or thereabouts? And he says, and there's Philip Alliot, who always crashes anyway. Now we're trying to take out Mansell.
Didn't he say he wasn't? Who was it? He wasn't a fan of. Was it Arnoux or it was someone else? Yeah, it was Jarier. He said Jarrier's got the mental age of 10 or something like that. Because he's holding up Pironi, I think it is, in the Ferrari, or is it Tambay? Patrick Tambay, and he's holding one of them up. And basically, James, you can hear him in the commentary box. He's getting so angry, and he says, it's just typical for Jarier. He's got the mental age of 10 anyway." And he's going sick. There was a thing about I think it was René Arnoux actually, because it was the Monaco Grand Prix. I love anything that James Hunt did. He was an absolute hero. There's so many great stories that Murray told about him on his Beyond the Grid podcast as well on F1. But one of the highlights is on YouTube where they've got the Monaco Grand Prix on, and I think Prost is gonna he's going to lap Arnaud, and Murray starts saying, and Arnaud says the reason he's going so slow these days is he's used to turboed cars, and these naturally aspirated cars are a different kettle of fish, or so he says. And then you just hear James Hunt grab the mic off him and just go, and all I can say is that is bull. And then he just hands the back, and Murray just goes, so anyway, and just carries on. It's just insane. I love it. Absolutely brilliant. What a guy.
There's a way that they can do it, isn't it? I mean, when it was James Hunt and Murray Walker, it was an incredible era of commentary, and I think we all watched it. We all used to get up and watch this. And I remember, because I one of the few races, I think I may not have watched it live, but I recorded it. Was of course Australia in Adelaide 1986 when Mansell had his blowout, and Murray made that incredible kind of oh, look at that, and it's Mansell, and it's gone from side to side and so on. And they could just somehow sum up the races in a way that nobody else could. I mean, I remember watching the other races in the 90s, and Sky of course was covering it at this point. But even though they had John Watson and they had another chap who was on it, I'm trying to remember, it was an Irish guy, or trying to remember what it was that they had. But you always watch BBC, right? When you could, because it was the Murray Walker commentary with James Hunt was just always that little bit better, and it was kind of always that little bit more exciting. What do you think makes a really good commentator? I know it's not an easy, but it's in your opinion.
Having a knowledge of the level you need to be at for what's going on. So I know some commentators that start down here when they're not very excited at all. They're very deadpan, very level, and they never come up from that level. You need to sort of start in the middle, be excited, and then get excited. And some people start up here and they don't have anywhere else to go. They're excited from the off, and it gets a bit boring a bit quickly. You need to just know when to get excited and when not to. So if you're watching somebody that's just on a qualifying lap and they're not particularly going any quicker, you'd be talking as I am now. You'd just be summing it up, going over what he's doing, maybe talk about what he's doing on the lap. And then if he sets a purple sector, then you're thinking, oh, hey, we could be onto something here. He's gone fastest to the whole session. And then when he goes and puts it on pole, it's like, oh, and there you go, pole position for so-and-so. And he's now provisionally at the front of the grid. Let's see what everyone else can do to try and beat that. You've got to have the steps to go up. And then the thing is as well, is that not only going up, but coming down, coming down from that high of something really exciting. You can't come straight back down to deadpan, because then it'll feel like you're not invested in it. If you want to make sure that people know you're invested in what you've just watched and you're still excited, you've got to come down gradually from it bit by bit. And I do think that it's having those levels, definitely, because we all have different voices, we all have different vocabularies. That's part of the beauty of commentary, I think, is that you get to see so many different levels of talent in so many different places in different ways. Because everyone has their own style of doing it. People have their own phrases for stuff. People just have their own words for things. I mean, one of my sort of real gripes, and I'm sorry to anyone that does this. I know one lad that is, if he watches this, he's going to know that I'm picking on him because he does this, is when we're watching a car from like a TV camera. So it's like an external trackside camera, and we're watching somebody and they'll say they're on board with them. And to me, that's not right, because if you're on board, you're in the car, you are riding on board with the car itself. But some people, they say that for external cameras, and, there's no definite right or wrong with that. But again, it just highlights the different styles and vocabularies that we've got, really. Yeah.
No, that's fantastic. Now, I've been putting in the comments there to get your questions in so that you can
bring
ask.
them in, guys.
Get Chaz to answer all these wonderful questions. Now, one that we had a little bit earlier on was from Keith Will Own You, and he was saying, which do you prefer, doing your own sim racing or commentating?
That's very difficult at the moment, because I've recently fell in love with the sim again, because I've now got triple screens. I just move them back on my desk. I've got the sim rig here. I just drag it along, slide it under the desk, and then bring the screens forward and crack on. I've really enjoyed a set of Corsa recently, and even just racing against the AI, even Wreckfest. And I mean, people say, "Oh, it's not a sim."
It's great fun.
It's so much fun. And the first time I went over a jump in Wreckfest, I nearly fell out of the rig, because you have that moment, when you fall from something really high, your stomach goes and you go, "Whoa, hang on." I had that moment when I was in a jump. I was that immersed in it. I was like, "Hey, up!" Sort of like I lifted myself out of the rig so it didn't hurt when I landed. It was honestly mad. But I think I have to say commentary, because I get to share my excitement over what's going on with everybody that's watching, and I also get to see everything that's going on. One of the things that I sort of hated about, I did a YouTube series a while ago, not a very exciting or sort of prestigious one, on touring cars in R Factor. I made liveries and stuff myself and made a little series, just raced against the AI. But what annoys me is that I want to know what's going on, who's in the lead, who's battling with who, what's going on behind me, who's crashed, and so on. And when you're in the car and you're doing it yourself, you can't pick up on all of that. You can just check your little relative box in the corner or whatever you use and see who's dropping back, who's moving around. But unfortunately, I have to say commentary, because it's what brings the money in, I'm afraid.
I was going to say, have you got any contracts pending? Don't worry, they won't be watching this. No, but it's like... But now we've got a good question here. It was also from Keith Onu. Now let me just quickly check exactly where it was.
I've seen it sent one in.
I will try and get to that. Now let's see, where are we? We are on here. What is your race start comments? Because people like David Croft, it's always lights out and away we go. How do you start a race when you do the commentary?
When the lights are coming on, I tend to build up the event with the full name. So I'd be saying, and round 10 of the British Boring Car Championship from Alton Park is, and then you wait for the lights to go out and you say away when they get going. It's a bit of an anticlimactic one when you sort of in a friendly way say the word away. It's a bit like, God, do I need to change that? But it's the thing is now that has become such an important thing as a commentator. Obviously, Murray Walker and the famous, and it's go, go, go. Yeah. We love that. If anyone ever does that again, I think I'm going to have to order a hitman on them to just say, stop it. That's Murray's thing. But that's the thing. As things evolve and we keep going through the ages of doing all of this, people are going to say, oh, but that's so-and-so's phrase. I know I've contradicted myself here, but, it's not. But, yeah, with Crofty, he's one of them that's always up there for me. He's always excited. But if I'm honest, F1 sort of needs that in comparison to all the days. But the whole start procedure, you need to just sort of keep it a bit level, and then you build on, oh, so and so's had a good start, and oh, this guy's dropped back, and oh, look, this is going to be contact, and then you have to set it as a platform to then build on and get excited about. Yeah.
How do you find the commentator James Allen? Because he came in right after kind of Murray Walker, didn't he? He kind of took over when Murray retired. Because a lot of people thought, and to be fair, it was hard on him because he was filling the boots of Murray Walker.
Oh God, yeah.
And that is never going to be easy to try and do. And he lasted about 7 or 8 years or more, right till the end of when BBC got it back, wasn't it? After when Hamilton got his title, because a lot of people saw him as it felt slightly fake with his kind of commentary, and he just maybe had a slightly unfortunate tone of voice that didn't always sound that real. And obviously, don't worry, we're not going to hold you to it. But that type, how were you an admirer of that kind of commentary, or how did you find him?
I can understand what people mean when they say that it sounded a bit fake, because he's got a bit of an aggressive voice for it, but he's analytically he is fantastic. I'd say he's more suited to the sort of Martin Brundle role that we had. Murray would do all the exciting stuff, tell you what's happening on screen, and then Martin would follow it up with why it's happening, what's happening to the tyres, what the pit crew will be thinking, what the driver will be thinking. He's been there and done it. I think James Allen was more suited to that sort of role, but they put him in at the deep end of filling Murray's boots, like you say. So I enjoyed it. I thought he's really good at what he does. But again, if I had to be critical, I'd say he's another one where he's excited from the very get-go, very get-go, and doesn't come down from that very much. But I feel that F1 needs that, because there have been seasons where
it was dull.
Because everybody now looks at it and goes, "Oh, F1's not as good as it used to be," and I think that, I spoke to some of the guys in my sim racing team that I'm in, about it the other day, and when you look back, I mean, Murray himself and the racing, it wasn't actually that great. Murray was a great commentator, hands down, because of what he did. But for the amount of stuff, if you go in on what he got wrong and what he missed, things like that, there's a lot of things that he missed and got wrong. Murrayisms have become legendary, but the racing was the same. You'd have top 5 where the leader would win by 45 seconds, and it'd be another half a minute to the car behind. We're blessed now with the fact that a 6-second win in Formula One is a big margin these days, and it's like, that's brilliant. But it's the over dominance of Mercedes that fair play to them. I've got no issue with it. I'm a Hamilton fan and a Mercedes fan, but I'd still like to see closer racing. It's the ones that can't help losing that are the bad ones for that. But we won't get into toxic F1 fans because that'll dig me in a hole.
I completely agree with you. I think, to be fair, the racing has actually been very good even over the last few years. I mean, Hamilton in many cases was driven to the wire to get those championships. It was actually pretty close in many of the races. And some incredible performances. I always remember it was the German Grand Prix. Was it 2 years ago when Hamilton started 14th on the grid and he won? That was an incredible race. And we've had some really amazing races right the way through. And this year with Perez winning in Bahrain and the second Bahrainian race, and also with what was his name? The French chap who won in Monza. It's you could never be commentating. Gasly, yes. And that was an astonishing race, So there were lots of really kind of amazing events and races that have happened. I think for me, as I'm a slightly older F1 fan, we're just missing the noise a bit, because the new engines, although they're a bit louder, they just don't sound that great because they rev quite low and they don't really. Everyone's noticed when Alonso took his Renault V10 round Abu Dhabi. Wasn't that the most incredible? The sunlight, the car racing round, and that was just what Formula One should be. What's your take on that? Do you think F1 needs to get a bit louder, a bit more of a show again?
Yeah, I do, unfortunately. The missus gets the Hoover out on the landing, and I think, we bought a Formula One car. It's to see Alonso's car. It was the R25, wasn't it? The Renault R25. To see it on modern day cameras with modern day audio in wonderful HD and just have it how it was insane. And see it on slicks as well. That thing was flying. He was not just messing about. It wasn't Goodwood Festival of Speed. I'm going to cruise at 20 mile an hour everywhere. It was let's go for it. And I would love to see Formula One go back that way, but I think that was around the time where the cars started getting even more, for sort of that time, bad at chucking dirty air out the back, and they couldn't race as closely. That it was getting to that point then. I think that I'm hoping the new rules do shake it up a bit. I know that some of the top teams will obviously be developing now and getting ready for it, but I'm very hopeful that we'll see a bit of a new challenger come forward, and hopefully not the same dominance again. Hats off to Mercedes on it, but I don't ever think we'll get back to the point of having V10s and this incredible sound, although I'd love it. But in all honesty, I think that the new rules should shake it up, and I really hope they do.
Yeah, and I was reading a thing on Facebook actually earlier about Formula One. Similarly, Bernie Eccleston, who's now turned 90. Actually, doesn't look 90, but he's 90 years old. I know, it's incredible, really. I wonder what kind of vitamins is he taking, because it certainly looks so well. He looks about 65 when you see him on TV, and he's absolutely sound as anything. But he was saying that we should just drop these horrendous hybrid engines and go back to the V8s, just because they're cheaper to run now because it's old tech. And until they get the next engine sorted out, then that would at least bring back some of the show and a bit of the noise. That I think a lot, and I have to say, I was like, yes, please, somebody finally talking sense, because I don't know about you, but have you ever been to like F1 testing? We used to do it at Jerez in Barcelona, and you could get out there on a cheap flight on EasyJet and go and watch them.
I've got a few friends that have been out to do it. I was going to go out in 2019, but it was organised a little bit too late, so I didn't end up going. But it's something I really want to do, to see the cars out there for the first time. And I know that it's not really a busy circuit at the time either. No,
it's quiet. It's quiet.
I would
get in for next to nothing. Well, we used to do it when it was at Jerez in 2008, 2009, and 2011. We went, and it was just the best thing. You got in for literally €10 into Jerez, And I remember taking my wife in 2011 for the first time, and she said, "Oh, well, this is going to be very, very loud, isn't it, all the time?" And I said, "Oh, it won't be that bad. You'll get used to it. It'll be absolutely fine." Well, we heard the cars from about 2 miles from the circuit as we come off the motorway. And she said, "What's that? Is that one of those?" I said, "No, that's just a bee, Spanish bees. Very loud, like this." And I quickly put my window up, and it was like, but actually, as soon as we got into the car park, it was like, yeah, look out for it. As soon as she heard it, she was quite motivated because it is an incredible sound. And so we kind of ran into the stadium and got our tickets done, and then went into the bit. And of course, when you come into it, you're right at the chicane. And the first car we saw was Michael Schumacher coming round in his McLaren, in the Mercedes, with the red helmet and the whole thing, and it was fantastic. And of course, the V8 noise was just amazing, and at the very end, we managed to get round to the start-finish straight, and to the opposite the pits. You were able to sit there, and they all did a warm-up lap. It's because it'd been quite quiet during the day, so they decided, right, they'll do their practice starts towards the end. So they were doing practice starts at the end of the grid, and then the hearing out. And with those V8s, when they bounce off the rev limiter, it's just the most amazing sound. And then we thought it was over. But no, they all kind of came on the track, and there must have been about 10 or 12 of them at the time, or certainly a good number of them. And they did a practice warm-up lap to the grid. And so they were all kind of coming up, and some of them would actually go on the grid. I think they must have been allowed to do that at that point. And then they would just momentarily stop, and then they would head off. And so we got this phenomenal run. And once you've got that noise in your head, it's impossible to get rid of it. It's just the incredible thing. That is there a particular series that you would love to commentate on, or if you had a choice of track and car, what would be your best race or the series you would love to commentate on?
Hands down, BTCC. I adore the British Touring Car Championship. It's been amazing since, well, let's ignore 2001 till about 2006, but I'd say about 2004 maybe. But honestly, there's nothing like it. And I watched recently the Johnny Smith Late Break Show with Jason Plato and Matt Neal, and they were saying, no matter what series you go in, if you go in Formula One, if you go into GT World Challenge, if you go into the Le Mans series, there's just nothing like BTCC. It is savage. It is nose to tail constantly. And as a commentator, you don't know where to look. I mean, I'm very fortunate to have become quite friendly with David Addison over lockdown and over the last year, and we've had the odd chat about it. And he shows the aspect that I want. That there's never any dull moments in BTCC. It's just incredible. There's a wonderful community behind it. There's an incredible bunch of people in the field. I mean, you've got the likes of Colin Turkington, who's Mr. Consistency, Ash Sutton, a very deserving champion this year, really exciting to watch. But then you've still got like some of the old guard like Matt Neal and Jason Plato. Admittedly, Plato wasn't in it this year. Matt Neal might not be in it next year. But there's just a great mix of drivers and the cars as well. I just find that the cars look like some of the best racing cars in the world. It's like they take your everyday hatchback, like the Astra. The Astra is a prime example. Put a massive beefy body kit on it, and it looks fantastic. It's a gorgeous looking race car, and no disrespect to TCR cars, but they're just a little bit more of a level up. And there's no other series in the world that uses them other than Dunlop Touring Car Trophy, where there's about 2 of them. But it's just. I mean, Nylinski's just said in the chat as well, it's exhausting to watch, and that's right. Me, when I a lot of the time during this year, I've been away at circuits commentating while BTCC's been on. So I'd get back, and my girlfriend's obsessed with it as well. She's properly fallen in love with BTCC. So I'd get home, and I remember one night I got in, and this is on no reflection of my diet because I'm on a diet and losing weight at the minute. But I got in, and she said, I said, "What do you want to do?" It was about 9 o'clock at night. And I came in here, did a little bit of admin work and some bits. And she just popped her head, because the door is right here. And she just popped her head in and went, "Turn that off. We're going to go upstairs and watch BTCC and go and eat chocolate cake in bed." And I was like, seen a bit. That's it. I don't know why I've not put a ring on it yet, but wow. It's contagious, BTCC. It really contagious. It's so much fun. It's amazing.
Yeah. Well, we've got John Cleland, who just lives about less than an hour from me. I'm hoping eventually to get him on the show. Because he's such a great guy, and those years when it was him Steve Sofer, and then the current commentator as well, wasn't it? For BTCC.
Charlie Cox and John Watson were commentating on it about that time.
Yeah, but there was
Murray
the chap driving for BMW.
Tim Harvey.
Tim Harvey, that's right. Because in that year, '92, when they had that incredible finish to the title, and it was basically what car could cross the line and still going. It was a bit more like Wreckfest.
It was. It was. Really was.
But and I remember they had an interview with them not that long ago, and they had all three of them kind of sitting on a wall, and they were still quite peeved about it. Obviously, it's still quite a thing. Because it is. I mean, there were amazing races. I remember I went to Donington to watch Mansell race in the Ford Mondeo. I think that was about 94, 95 when he crashed into Tiffany Dell.
He did it
huge shunt.
98 as well. He did that. Yeah. He came back a few years later and did it 98, and it was insane. He was on it.
Yeah,
it was on
I remember because he was a couple of laps. He was staying in the same position, and then all of a sudden he started to come through the field. And everybody watching went absolutely crazy, and I can't remember if that's when he crashed into Tiffany Dell or not, or if he had a car problem. But one of the times he definitely did. But no, it was Nigel. It was great fun to watch them race. I always like the Renault Lagunas, and remember the Volvo Estates. They had the V850 Estates. That's what it was.
What a car!
It was. They were able to be iconic, weren't they? They were prepared to let different cars come into the series, which were always good. And of course, who can forget the Alfa Romeos of Tarquini? They were phenomenal.
Specials, eh?
Because that car was that not similar? I think to the World Touring car, wasn't it? Because they used to compete. And was it the big touring car championship that goes across Germany and Europe? But that was an amazing car. That's what I said. I remember I was watching one, and I said to my father, I said, "You've got to buy an Alfa Romeo 155. That has to be on the shopping list for your next car." And to my surprise, he did. But it wasn't a Silverstone version or the nice kind of sporty one. It was a fairly standard one, but it was still a phenomenal car. So did you have a kind of particular era of BTCC that you kind of look back and think that was amazing? Or any particular races that you think were phenomenal, that ones that you've really loved?
I always had a VHS, as we all know, Duke Video do incredible season reviews of the British Touring Car Championship. I always had the 2000 VHS when all the manufacturers had pulled out. You only had 3 Fords, 3 Vauxhalls, 3 Hondas, and then Matt Neal in a Nissan, the 99 Primera, the upgraded one. And then you had every so often, I think it was David Leslie, and there was another guy that raced. I think Hoy raced in that as well, in another Nissan. And that's when they introduced Class B, and they only had 4 or 5 of them to begin with. And that year, it really grew, and it was just insane. And that again is another reason I got into commentary, because as much as everybody loves Murray Walker, my favorite commentator of all time is Charlie Cox, who Australian who used to race bikes. Actually, no, he used to commentate bikes, and then he raced in BTCC, and then he became a commentator. And him and John Watson were just as good a duo as David Addison and John Watson are now on GT World Challenge, because you've got obviously a really strong character in Charlie who makes all these jokes and says all these hilarious things, gets really excited. And then you've got John Watson who takes no nonsense. And, if someone does something stupid, he'll say, "Oh, that was rubbish." Or he just does it how it is. And I mean, David Addison has joked to me a few times about how annoyed John Watson gets at track limits abuse and the fact that the points go down to places below 6th, because he's like, "Oh, in my day, you get 6th place, you still get only 1 point and all this." And I think my favorite season is 1999, because I love that Nissan Primera. That is hands down favorite BTCC car, very closely followed by the Laguna in 90.
Did Keith O'Dwyer not drive the Nissan?
He did in 93, I think it was, 93, 94. He went over the fence at Donington in it, didn't he?
That's
he
right,
literally threw it at the scenery, as I said before.
I remember, that's right. It was an incredible crash. He had some big accidents on his own. But I remember Keith O'Dwyer, and then of course it was Andy Rouse as well, and there were so many. It was an incredible era of racing.
It was untouchable.
Yeah, and of course Top Gear used to cover it. I remember Tiffany Dell doing a few races as well. He would get an invitation to go and race, and so no, it was fantastic. But no, it's amazing that all these different eras. And in terms of a Grand Prix, if there was a track that you would like to commentate on, what would it be? Because in the current grid, there's some pretty spectacular circuits. What would you like?
This might come across as a weird one, but Baku. I don't think there's been a boring Grand Prix in Azerbaijan.
No.
I'm not usually a fan of a street circuit unless it's Monaco. But because we all know Monaco is just so special. But I think Baku is just. I've actually driven it on R Factor a little bit as well, and I can see why drivers like it as well. It's just there's something weird about it because of how wide it is in certain places, and then suddenly you've got the castle section that's about as wide as my little finger, and then it opens up again at the last part of the lap. It's a very different sort of street circuit in its own way, and like I said, I don't think there's been a boring Grand Prix there.
I think it does. It's interesting that you say it's similar to Monaco because I think the buildings are lovely. It's looks very well to do and well maintained, and it's always very kind of spick and span, and they obviously put a lot of effort to make it look as good as it can. But there's an atmosphere about the place, and I think having the castle and people racing through that tiny bit of road when they go past the castle is incredible. It's insane, really. But they managed to do it. I think very few people. I know they've crashed into the wall there, but thankfully only it's a slower section, so it's not too dangerous. But it's an amazing. It is, and having those long straights allows for good overtaking as well. It always makes it good. Now earlier on there was a question, I believe, from your brother, and I've remembered that you do the British Boring Car Championship, and at first I thought, is he making a joke there with that question and trying to call it something else? But he says, what was the best season of the British Boring Car Championship that you've ever commentated on?
Well, there's only been 2, and he was the champion of the most recent one. And everyone claims that it was a fix because my brother won the series that I run and commentate. We actually had David Addison on that as well for a few rounds, and he found it just as funny. I enjoyed season 1 just because it was the first time we'd done it, and it was mad. It was the idea came to life. Season 2 was just as exciting, but I think there were a few moments where it was like it's always going to happen when you get a later season of something. You always look back and go, that wasn't as good as season 1. And I think just because of how new it was in season 1, I found it a bit more exciting at the time. But to explain the British Boring Car Championship to people, basically I had a stupid idea at the start of lockdown. Although I had a stupid idea about 3 years ago to do it as a one-off event on iRacing where we had all the Super Tourer liveries from the late 90s, like the Rapid Fit Mondeos, Master Fit Vauxhalls, Nescafe Lagunas, all on the Kia Optima that they have in iRacing, which is a god-awful car. It's 375 brake horsepower, though, from a front-wheel drive GT car, because it was in the GTS class in I think it was a Continental Challenger in America. It was a weird thing, but it was the only touring car we had on iRacing for people to race in. But eventually, I decided to call the championship the British Boring Car Championship and put it on the most boring car you can get in iRacing, which is a Jetta diesel cup car. And, it got a good reception to begin with. Like, people wanted to race in it. We had the 99 season, effectively. So there was 16 cars, 4 independents, and then 6 other teams. So you had your Volvos, your Lagunas, your Primeras, your Vectras, and so on, and the Hondas as well. But they all had different logos on. So rather than, the Honda with the red flames down the side and a big Honda up the side of it, it'd just say Jetta up the side of it, things like that. And we decided to make it into a series, and it was hilarious. And when I first spoke to David, I said, do you want to give this a go? And he was like, we'll try Alton and see how it goes. But yeah, if I had to choose one of the 2 seasons, unfortunately for my brother, who won the second one, I'd have to say it was the first one.
Yeah. Oh. That's the thing. So did you say it was iRacing that went out on? Or I basically managed the whole series myself. A lot of the time in sim racing, I wanted to make it different because in sim racing, I've been in a lot of different leagues and I've broadcasted a lot of different leagues, and you always know who drives for what team. So, like a few friends of mine race for Pure Sims, for example. It used to be CQR Club. I know people who race for teams like FitSty Motorsport or TechSense FitSty Motorsport, as it's known. And, every single time
that you go into a season, there's no sort of build up before it of, oh, who's this person driving for this season, or oh, who have this team recruited, because you just know. You get an entry list and you go, oh, so and so's in it, and you know what team they drive for, so there's no excitement about what that combination is. So I preset the teams, did it as it was. So I basically made the grid. So there was 2 of each manufacturer entry, and then the 4 independents. So you had like the Paula Cook Honda Accord livery, the old Arena International Laguna that was silver that faded to black at the back that Russell Spence liked to throw at barriers. The Mark Blair Vectra, if you remember that one, dark blue one with the yellow arches down it. Very, very strange car. I made all them, and then we did a random draw with a spinny like Wheel of Fortune wheel to see who would get given each car for the very first season. And then after season 1, we then did a driver's market where people said if they wanted to leave the current team they were in and go to another one, then they had to apply to it. And it's things that you don't normally get in sim racing. So we did that and ran all that through iRacing just because it's got such a good platform to run leagues on. And then I broadcasted all of it as well.
Fantastic.
So it helped me with the commentary because I knew what was going on behind the scenes all the time because it was me that was doing it. So,
you know, all the secrets. You knew exactly what was going on. Oh, that's brilliant. That's brilliant. Now, we've got a good question from the Mew. It says, Chaz, is there a series not yet on SRW that you would like to see and commentate on?
That's a very good question, actually. SRW is Sim Racers World, who run a lot of different leagues on iRacing, and Sim Racers World TV, who I'm one of the sort of managers for with Ian Roots. And in terms of series that I've not commentated on yet that they do, I'm trying to think, because I've commentated on most of them. We started with the Sim Racers World TCR series, which is fantastic, and it's now the Z1 Dashboard Sim Racers World TCR series that I commentate on with Peter Mackay, who's an absolute hero. I'd quite like to do the Dynamics Endurance series, to be honest. I do like me endurance racing, but we've got a lot of others that I do. I can't really think, if I'm honest, the Mew. I'm sorry, mate.
No,
sorry, buddy.
Oh, that's the thing. And of course, in your career, because again, in the pre-interview, you were saying about the kind of people that you work with. You know, many of the touring car drivers and things like that. Would it be people that you would like to meet in the sim racing world or the real racing world that you know that you haven't met so far, or would you like to name drop a few of the people you've been able to meet in your career so far?
You know what? I've never met Murray Walker.
Yeah, I think we'd all.
We knew he was going to be the sort of subject of chat tonight, but I would love to meet Murray. My brother met him by accident at Goodwood Festival of Speed once. I was going to buy some. It's stupid, and I hate myself for it. I was buying some Ray-Bans. Right, I found them on this stall, and there was like 20% off, and they were purple see-through Ray-Bans, and I'd wanted a pair of them for ages. So I stood there and bought them, and my brother, I was waiting for the guy to sell another pair and then walk over and sell them to me. And then my brother was like, oh, stuff this, I'm going to go on a walk. Walked literally about 100 yards down, round the corner, and Murray Walker was just sitting down to do a book signing, and he got to meet him and have a quick chat with him then, and I didn't. And honestly, for some reason, the brotherly rivalry from then on got stronger, and I don't know why. But but no, in terms of meeting real people from it, there's a few drivers I've met recently that are great. Adam Christodoulou, he's been involved a lot with Tom Brooks and doing his Make Me a Racing Driver series. Adam's a great guy. He's just signed another deal with Mercedes for a few years, so good on him and congrats on him. Congrats to him for that. But I met him at Nürburgring when I did the 24-hour there this year, and he's just such a sound guy. I met him literally mid-qualifying session, so he was very busy, so I didn't really get a chance to speak to him much, but I just know from how he composes himself and the way he speaks to people online, and, you know, we've messaged every now and then, and he seems like a sound bloke. I've met the wonderful Jimmy Broadbent that we all know and love. I interviewed him at the Buckmore Park 24 hours in 2019. That was my first real world commentary gig that I was sort of booked for. Just trying to see in my head who else there is, really. There's a lot of people I'd love to meet. I would actually like to meet Damon Hill, which is an odd one because I've never been Damon's biggest fan. I don't mean to, I'm not going to offend anyone, I hope, but when we all, as Brits, when we have somebody that's high up in a sport and doing a wonderful job, I always refer to Damon Hill as the Tim Henman of Formula One for Britain, because Tim Henman was like, he was good, but he just
he was never quite what it needed to be. Yeah,
and I know Damon Hill.
Fourth round Wimbledon.
Yeah, and I know Damon Hill won the World Championship, and he's an incredible driver. But I just, in my head, he's never been up there. You know, he's never been up there like Nige.
Yeah,
but I would love to meet him because I know that would put that to bed. You know, I've seen so many great things about him, heard so many great things about him, and I really would like to meet Damon Hill, to be honest.
Yeah. No, I have to say, it's. I remember watching the 1996 championship, and it was so close as well. I mean, yes, Villeneuve was there, Schumacher was there, but the Williams had that bit of an edge overall. But it was still a nail-biting. Especially when I was it in '96, or no, it was '94 that they had the wet race in Japan, where he beat Schumacher, and that was one of his best ever races.
Yeah,
when it was the two races put together, wasn't it? When they had the red flag and things. But it showed that he could do it. And to be fair, in Adelaide '94, before the clash with Schumacher was ahead, and then he was losing time, and Hill had caught up again. And then of course they had their famous clash.
Schumacher things.
Yeah, that only he would do, and that was the thing. But no, it was amazing, and also I mean Hill was filling big seats from Nigel Mansell. I mean that was a big seat to fill, and Mansell, we'd all waited for him to finally win a world championship. No, he was quite. I'd love to meet Nigel. I have to admit. I think that would be. He was a fun guy. I know people used to mock his interviews. But he knew his stuff. I mean, he was an absolute fighter, and he did things with cars and then something. I mean, was when he won the British Grand Prix in '91 and '92. I mean, the scenes of everybody around his car was fantastic, wasn't it? I mean, and he simply ran somebody over. And I remember he was interviewed and he said, "Oh, I think I ran one of my fans over, but he didn't seem to mind." You know, it was
I don't think I would.
You know. But no, there were some fantastic scenes, and I'm sure in the future we'll see you do many more of that. Do you have big plans for this year? Do you have any? What are the kind of highlights coming up?
I want to add on to the last thing, Mika Hakkinen.
Yes.
Favorite driver of all time, Mika Hakkinen. He's just so fantastic and so composed, and he's the one driver that Michael Schumacher feared. And to be that driver must be a massive thing. I also found out recently about him because I was watching a video about him. I'll make this quick. And he made a joke to Nico Rosberg, who was driving him around in a McLaren P1, Mika's own P1, that he was like, "Don't kill me, Nico. I've got 5 kids." And I thought, flipping heck, does he have 5 kids? So went to Wikipedia, as you do, because, you know, Wikipedia knows everything. And I found out that it really wrenched my heart that Mika lost his entire memorabilia, trophies, everything ever from his F1 career because he had a new house built. I think it was in Paris, and one of the lights in his trophy room short circuited and burned the place down. So he lost every sort of physical memory other than his head injury of his F1 career that he'd had. He lost, and honestly, it brought a tear to my eye to think that. But
my goodness,
I've been a fan of Mika forever. He's just. When he says the Michael, every time he does that, it just kills me off because it's just hilarious. But as of this year, I've not announced it yet on my website, so this is a sneak peek. But I'm very happy that the Creative Funding Solutions Sports 2000 Championships have asked me back to be their series commentator again in real life this year. They gave me my first ever full calendar of commentary last year. They're amazing bunch of people. The cars are unbelievable as well. They're about 200 brake. They weigh 520 kilos with the driver. Wow, they go like stink, and they cost nothing to run all year. Some of them spent barely $5,000 a year to run their car last year, and they're almost as quick. I think they were like a second and a half off GT3 times around Snetterton, and they're like 10% of the budget, if that, and it's just amazing. The whole paddock's lovely, and there's a class called you'll probably know yourself actually, Pinto class cars.
Oh yes, yeah.
Old Pintos like Lola 8890s and things like that. They do something to me, just the curves and the lack of like I love aero. Like I'm a humongous fan of massive canards, big splitters, huge wings, beefy wheel arches like you get in BTCC, but smooth curves of a Lola 8890. To commentate on that and to, you know, have the guys enjoy it and be a part of it is amazing. So they've got me on for this year, which I'm very happy to announce. There's a lot of sim racing stuff going on, as there always is. You know, there's weeks in my calendar that I've got one broadcast a day for like 15 days at one point in February. Wow. Other than that, really, there's no other real world stuff coming on at the minute, because I must admit, lockdown has helped me a lot with that, because it compressed the calendar so much into a few months. People like David Addison and a lot of other commentators like Andy McEwen, for example, couldn't be at certain events at the same time, and they had commitments with other championships. So I'd get roped in to do stuff, and they'd be like, Chaz, we've got TCR UK on at Silverstone this weekend. Do you want to? Yeah, I'm on my way. I'm in the car. It's like, you know, I'm already
work related. I can travel. That's it.
The motorway. You know, stuff like that is fantastic. I'm hoping for a lot more of that this year, in terms of last minute stuff, because it's a little bit more exciting, because then you're like, oh right, I need to prepare for this, get ready. ChazDraycott.com, you know, if you want to book me.
Yes, absolutely. That sounds fantastic.
But I've got this now as well, actually.
Yeah, Chaz Draycott Media.
My mum got me Chaz Draycott Media branded stuff for Christmas, and I hadn't thought of. I've wanted to get it done for ages, but then I've never bothered. There's a tote bag and everything, and face masks even. I can't thank her enough for that.
Oh, that's fantastic. Well, no, it's great to see you. You know, you've done very well and got big plans for this year, which is really, really good. And I mean, I very much enjoyed listening to your commentary on the SimGrid race at the 24-hour race at Spa, which was such a good thing. That was the first time I really got to see what you could do. And it's fantastic having you on the show. And we've had lots of great comments. And to everyone who's been watching today, if this is the first time that you've watched the Car Sim and Race Driver show, it'd be fantastic to have you on board. It's free to subscribe and hit that notification bell, and you'll never miss a video, because we've had lots of we've had, you'll probably know Jake Speary. We had Jake Speary, the commentator, a few months ago as well, and we've had people like Super GT, and we've got big news. He's coming back on the show. We almost killed him the last time. We gave him the holovirus the last time, and the poor thing got a terrible migraine halfway through and had to finish early, but thankfully he was fine. But he's coming back on the 28th of January in about 3 weeks' time. So he'll be back. Yeah, he's so good. He's very funny and just really, really good. So he'll be coming back. We've also got a female racer next week. It's Quick Gabby, who's from the Czech Republic. So she's coming on. She's big on Twitch. So she'll be on next week at 9 o'clock here live on the Car Sim and Race Driver show. But for everyone who's watching, if this is the first time that you've seen Chaz Draycott, now there's no excuse for not going onto his website. And do you have merchandise that you can sell? Is there anything they can get a hold of?
I do want to. I don't know if anyone would want to wear anything with my name on it, but I might do. I don't know yet. That's unconfirmed, unfortunately. But yeah, we'll see. We'll see.
Now, there's one last question from Nalinsky. And he says, sorry for repeating, but the big question remains unanswered. Which would you rather fight, a 1 horse-sized duck or 100 duck-sized horses?
100 duck-sized horses.
I'm glad you answered that, because I don't have any clue what to say. You know, but
if it was one massive duck, you'd probably try and kick it, and it wouldn't really do much. But if it's a duck-sized horse, you could just boot the thing. Not that I condone animal violence, you know. This is in no way me saying I would hurt animals. But honestly, if I had to defend myself from 100 duck-sized horses, you could get a good swing on one, I think.
There we are. No, I also did notice a very good comment there from your brother. When it was the one, it was saying that brotherly. That's it. Brotherly rivalry. Not even a competition. I don't see any trophies in your backdrop. But
yeah, that's true. Well, he's got a massive head on him now. He can barely get in the front door when he gets home from work, because in the first season of Boring Cars, he won the Independence Championship. Then he teamed up with his mate Josh for season 2. They won the teams championship, and then he won the overall drivers championship. So other than the sort of drivers driver award that we do at the end of the season, he's won everything in 2 seasons. Bless him.
Well, that's pretty good going. Well, we've been going for 1 hour and 10 minutes, and I know you're a very busy man, and I very much appreciate you coming on the show tonight.
I loved it. I really have. Thank you. It's been great.
It's been great to have you on the show. Please stay on the line for the moment. But to everyone who's been watching, thank you very much for watching the Car Sim and Race Driver show with our fantastic guests, Chaz Draycott. Now, we have lots of corny lines on this show that never should be used if you're a real racing driver or even a sim driver. But one of my friends who was doing actually getting his racing license at Silverstone many years back, happened to do this just to make a joke, and it stayed with us ever since. And, you know, he paid $6,000 to do this racing license. He had all his kit, all this stuff. And you had to do 2 races at Silverstone. And then in the morning, they had their debrief or their brief to tell them, you know, if you crashed, you weren't allowed to take part in the second race. It was very, very strict. And so the main chief instructor at Silverstone says, now, does anyone have any questions that they would like to say? And of course, Jonathan says, well, it looks like I'll win the race at the first corner. And he just went, oh, no. It was like, thankfully, he was having a sense of humor. But in the end, Jonathan finished 3rd in his first race, which is not too bad going. So we always say on our kind of motto here at the Car Sim and Race Driver Show is drive fast and try not to crash. And if you do, you'll win the race at the first corner. But, you know, so there we have it. But thank you very much for coming on the show, Chaz. You've been a fantastic guest.
Thank you.
And to everyone who's been watching, thank you very much for watching. I know you've been watching from across the globe. It's been the Car Sim and Race Driver Show. So take care and join us on Monday night at 9 o'clock when it's me, Fat Man in a cheap sim, doing my broadcasting on PS4, normally GT Sport. So take care, and we'll see you very, very soon. Bye.